Now, I know because you listen to this show, you love Chicago. In fact, you probably know your community very well. Maybe you're involved in a block club or some other neighborhood organization because you're passionate about the place you live. Well, you might be able to turn that passion into a profession, helping others find neighborhoods that they love with a career in real estate. When you earn your license with Realtors Real Estate School, you'll have access to a community of real estate professionals who can offer guidance and mentorship. Learn how you can get started this summer. Visit realtorsrealestateschool.com/begin. What's up? So if you like me, living green and reducing your food waste is probably a little hard and complicated, right? But it doesn't have to be. Not when we're using Waste Not. Waste Not is an at-home composting service, and it's pretty simple. They give you a clean bucket, you put your food, scraps, paper products, and compostables in, then they come pick it up in like a week or two later, and they give you a whole new clean bucket. So give Waste Not a try at home. Check out wastenotcompost.com. Plus, our CityCast Chicago listeners can test the service with a free month by using promo code CityCastCompost, all one word. Make sure you stay tuned after the interview because we've got a segment sponsored by the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events that's got your guide to the Taste of Chicago next weekend. Today on CityCast Chicago, in the lead up to last week's Democratic National Convention, Chicagoans were told time and time again that our neighborhood restaurants, not just the ones near the United Center and McCormick Place, would definitely see a boost during the week. Well, CityCast contributor Leigh Giangreco is back to let us know if the convention impacted local restaurants as promised. It's Wednesday, August 28th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Leigh, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Hey, thanks for having me post DNC, Jacoby. You caught me out of my little cocoon that I finally emerged from.
Seriously, you did a little bit of everything. You covered small businesses, restaurants, security perimeters. I mean, you were DNC out the whole week. Did you get some sleep over the weekend?
I did. That's basically all I did. I think Friday I just took the day off, slept until 1, went to the beach this weekend. It just basically needed to veg out. I was up till 3, sometimes 4 in the morning, a couple nights in a row. That wasn't, I'm going to be honest, like that, when I was out late, I wasn't like out working, okay? Like I saw Joan Jett, like, all right, I deserve a little treat, guys, come on.
Obviously, we're going to get into the business side of things, but one thing you did all last week is you kept asking people who were visiting, where were they eating? What did you hear over and over again?
Yeah, so, it's funny. When I thought of this story, I thought it was going to be an easy little listicle to put together, just like a fun list of where the politicos and celebrities of the DNC were dining. I figured, they'd throw out a couple of restaurant names. But instead, when I would catch people in the hallways at the United Center or at different events, what they would tell me is basically like, I didn't have time to go to restaurants. I was just shuffled from event to event. I ran into Illinois Senate President Don Harmon, and he had a great quote where he said, I wish I had been eating anywhere but off the fat of the land, wherever food is put in front of me from reception to reception. And I felt that because I also felt like I was just going from event to event. If I see another mini Chicago hot dog again in my life, I will scream. If we ever host this godforsaken event again, please, organizers, there's other food other than mini Chicago hot dogs, just anything, tacos, something, I don't know, Italian beef, maybe. There was Italian beef, actually, one place.
Who were the vendors that were located, I guess, on DNC grounds then that people were able to sample?
So there were some food trucks. I didn't get time to get out to those. There was a coffee truck. There were a few other ones. And then, of course, inside United Center, I was expecting maybe United Center to like up their game a little bit, maybe have something a little, I don't want to say fancier, but just like more unique than when you go to a Bulls game. Mm-hmm. But again, everything was pretty much like some bland chicken tenders, more hot dogs, that kind of thing. Just like your typical stadium fare. And when I talked to politicians and visitors, they said pretty much like they're either eating at the United Center, grabbing something really quickly, or they were just like eating whatever was at an event. I did talk to a few folks beforehand who told me where they plan on eating. For example, I talked to Christy George. She was executive director of the DNC, and she said among her top picks was this Brazilian restaurant not far from the United Center, Sinha. She really likes it there, said, they have a great patio. Another one in the South Loop, Williams Inn, that DNC senior advisor Kiana Barrett said that she was going to go to. But yeah, again, for the most part, a lot of folks were just kind of bouncing around. They weren't getting time to enjoy a sit-down dinner at one of Chicago's local restaurants.
I mean, this maybe foreshadows where we're going with this conversation, but big events that bring in a ton of visitors like the DNC. One of the things we hear in the lead up, and we had a long runway here, is that Chicago's restaurant scene is going to be out front and center, that neighborhoods across the city are going to see more visitors coming in. I mean, did we see any restaurants that did do really well last week?
So, yeah, as you said, in the lead up to the DNC, the organizers were really pressing this point that they were going to get to all 77 neighborhoods. But it seems like from the folks that I spoke with, those who benefited were those that were close to the United Center. For example, I spoke with Michael Salvatore. He owns Froth, which is a coffee shop just on the other side of Ashland, not far from the United Center. And then Bunker, which is a restaurant that is attached to it. And I actually visited Froth as well. Michelle and I went for a little pre-protest coffee. And I hit up Froth again later in the week when I knew I was going to be up late. And Froth, he said, and a barista I spoke with as well, they said they were going gangbusters. So they did very well in the morning and afternoon. Bunker, not so much. They had 2 events there. And then, they were expecting this big dinner rush, but because the convention speeches went on so late, people weren't filtering out of the convention looking for places to have a sit-down meal. They were just looking for a place to get a hard drink, and they were probably going to go to one of the events. Like I said, the event with Joan Jett, or maybe they were going to go to, Pritzker's Big Bash over at the Salt Shed. And that also tracks with what Sam Toya, head of the Illinois Restaurant Association specifically, told me, is that breakfast and lunch places did pretty well, but the dinner places did not. The other thing that he mentioned, which you talk about bringing in these conventions and whether they're going to be a boon for the city or, kind of just break even for a lot of these restaurants. It seems like the DNC was a mixed bag for the restaurant and bar industry. It wasn't a huge boon, but it wasn't a complete bust. It kind of depends on where your restaurant was and that sort of thing. The bigger point is that the DNC was essentially an ad, a national or even international ad for Chicago to show, hey, Chicago is not this crime-ridden hellhole that conservative media has said that it is. It's actually a pretty nice city, especially in the summer, and you should come visit. So what Sam Toya was saying is that even if we didn't get a huge amount of business from the DNC specifically, all these, national and international media that came here, and then, of course, the delegates and everyone else, we'll hopefully go back home and say, hey, Chicago's actually pretty great. We want to plan another trip here.
You know us, we've always got the next festival you got to check out, and this Labor Day weekend is Taste of Polonia Festival 2024 at the Copernicus Center in Jefferson Park. It's the biggest and oldest Polish festival in the U.S. with over 60 performers and dozens of merchants across 4 days and 4 stages. Go on and celebrate Polish culture with classic food and beer and bring the whole family. They're going to have a kids stage in the jumping zone for the little ones. You can even catch stars from Poland like DJ Berka, Krzysztof Sugowski, and Junior Stress. Taste of Polonia is August 30th through September 2nd. You can get your tickets today at topchicago.org. One thing I've learned doing this podcast is that every Chicagoan has an artist deep inside of them, even if they don't know it. Nah, I'm serious. All of us should get a chance to unleash our creative side in the greatest city in the world. And if you like, Kobe, where do I start? I got you. Art City is a gateway to the visual arts in Chicago. It's run by independent local artists, and you can either check out their classes or head over to their gallery. But maybe the best place to start, a classic paint and sip class. An expert will guide you through painting a beautiful piece of art that you get to take home, all while sipping on whatever you like to sip on. So bring a friend, bring a drink, and bring out your inner artist. Head to artcityshy.com to sign up for a paint and sip class. And while Art City's prices are already great, you can get a discount with code 5OFF. That's the number 5 off. I got the website for you again, artcityshy.com. I mean, there's obviously so much focus on the thousands upon thousands of visitors who are here during the DNC, but the behaviors of local Chicagoans also changed last week. How did that contribute to this mixed bag, this uneven success?
Yeah, so this kind of mirrors what we have started to see with other conventions, other big festivals like Lollapalooza or NASCAR. You start to see this pattern of suburbanites or out-of-towners coming into Chicago for those events, and they're coming downtown. And so local Chicagoans who might normally commute to the Loop or West Loop for their jobs are going to end up staying home and working remote because they don't want to deal with more people on the L, or they don't want to deal with, folks that don't really know where they're going, and just kind of general confusion and chaos and everything. And we did see that a little bit in the lead up to the DNC. Chicago Tribune reported that several businesses either closed their offices for the week of the DNC or advised workers to stay home during the convention. So those included John Deere, SVN, Accenture. Those are pretty big offices in the Loop, in the West Loop. And of course, some of the restaurants in those areas, which are just recovering from the pandemic that, we're still in, then lose their everyday business. Like, for example, Soul and Smoke. They have a location right near the Accenture Tower. And they were telling me in, the days leading up to the DNC that they were expecting lower business. Scott Weiner over at 50/50 Restaurant Group also told me that sales were actually down. He said our downtown places in the Loop were down about 50% in sales over the previous year. And most of their places near the safety zone were down about 25%. So, I think maybe the city of Chicago, Choose Chicago, should start to think about this. Like, okay, the DNC, worth it, as I said, as an advertisement for Chicago. But on the other hand, I don't know, don't you want to encourage people to come back to the Loop and get into their everyday habits? Like, when I worked in the Loop, I was probably buying too many sweet green salads and little treat coffees, but that was like my normal kind of everyday thing. And in the long run, that probably brings in more money than just a few people kind of coming in and out. If you start to establish those habits with people, getting on the CTA, which we also need as well, and, going out for drinks after work or getting that coffee or that bagel in the morning.
I mean, there's so many, not only last week, the restaurants that politicians go, best restaurants you need to go to, but if you just Google best restaurants in Chicago, you'll see low-hanging fruit for visitors. Like, I'm thinking Soleil over in North Lawndale, Rica Arepa up in Hermosa, Batters and Berries in Lincoln Park, Bronzeville Winery. Like, there's there were places not too far from the DNC, the McCormick place. And I understand the schedule is what it is. How can the city and organizers, how can they do better to spread that wealth around?
Yeah, I mean, I will say in all fairness, I do think the logistics of this particular convention prevented a lot of people from leaving, as I said, especially during that dinner time where, normally you might want to venture out to Logan Square or Pilsen or something to explore something a little bit different than what the Loop might have to offer. It took so long to line up for security at the United Center, and then to get out as well was a little bit of a maze as well, that like people just didn't have the time that, maybe they do at like, I don't know, whatever your orthopedics convention, there's not the same type of security layers there. But, again, when I spoke with Sam Toy, he said that Choose Chicago did a great job kind of getting the word out, but he said, of course, we can always do better. Something that I wondered, looking at like where you have that food truck situation is, okay, maybe could they have done a better job trying to bring in like pop-up restaurants or something like that on the premise of the United Center? Or I don't know if it's possible to bring people into the United Center. I don't know, some type of like mini festival. I just think this particular convention, it's harder to do those kinds of things because of all the security layers that were involved. But yeah, I mean, I guess this was a good test case for Choose Chicago in trying to push people out to those other neighborhoods. But I'm not sure that it worked. I'm not sure that the DNC's promise that there was going to be this trickle-down effect we actually saw. Because when I spoke with the neighborhood restaurants, like even Wicker Park, which I think most people who visit Chicago kind of know that Wicker Park is a quote-unquote hip neighborhood. When I talked to them the days leading up to the DNC, it's not like they had a bunch of bookings and everything.
So going back to all those people who were either looking for the same hot dog or constricted to the food on the grounds of the DNC, what kind of recs did you give visitors?
Yeah, so it's really funny. As I mentioned, I was trying to get, politicians and any celebrities that I ran into, just like ask them like, hey, what do you have on your hot dog? And where are you going out to dinner? And I ran into J.J. Abrams, who, of course, director of Lost, Star Trek and everything. And he was super nice. I don't know, shout out to JJ if he listened to a local podcast in Chicago. Probably not. But who knows? He was super nice, but after he told me what he likes on his hot dog, which is mustard and onions, he said, I don't really know where to go. Where should I go? So here were, my picks. First off, one of my top picks, if you like wine, which apparently JJ doesn't like, but he said his wife liked it. So I was like, okay, you should go to El Pana, because they have a great sommelier, and it's a very nice Italian place. And that's one of those places that it's like close enough to the Loop, kind of Gold Coast area, that it wouldn't be too out of the way if you're, one of the fancy DNC guests and you're probably staying at a nice hotel downtown. It's like stone's throw away from you. Now, if you wanted to maybe head to one of the other neighborhoods, like Lincoln Park, for example, I really like Avli. Obviously, Chicago's known for Greek food, so it's kind of like an upscale twist on that. I really like their Lincoln Park location. It's kind of tucked away, so I feel like that gives you a flavor of what a real Chicago neighborhood is like. And then, obviously, if you come to Chicago, I think you have to get really good Mexican food, and Pilsen's a great place for that. I love Ruby's. Their tortillas are homemade. I moved here from DC in 2020, and both DC and my hometown of Buffalo do not have good Mexican food. So when I came to Chicago, I didn't realize like what good Mexican food was. I almost cried when I had a taco at Ruby's. It was so good. So those are a few of my places. I don't know, when you're in the hallway of United Center and all of a sudden you have to like think of places for a director to go, you're like, I don't know.
I think you hit a good mix of neighborhoods. It's some good spots in there. I mean, so overall, just on maybe a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think Chicago's restaurant scene did during this influx of 50,000 visitors?
Again, you put out that 50,000 number. Chicago Tribune had a good story in the lead up to the DNC talking about how so many other conventions bring in even more people than that. So again, I think the purpose of the DNC was not so much, hey, we're going to bring in all these people, as we're going to bring in eyeballs physically here and then also on TV, right? I would say, given a lot of the Loop places didn't do as well as they thought that they would because of the loss of office workers, out of 10, I'd probably give this like a 6 in terms of how places did now. Later on, will this be good for Chicago? Probably. Again, I think as an advertisement, this bodes well for Chicago tourism and then, of course, hotels and restaurants. And hopefully we'll have that trickle down effect. And hopefully at the next convention, whatever that is, people won't be stuck behind 3 layers of security.
Leigh, I appreciate all of the work you've done to help us cover the DNC over the last now week and a half. Hopefully this is the last time you and I have to talk about it.
Oh my God, if we talk about the DNC one more time, I swear, just no more political conventions. We can do other stuff. Let's do a fun convention, like those people that collect Pez. I would love that.
I was going to say cobbling.
Oh, so wholesome. So nice.
Leigh Giangreco, freelance writer. Check the show notes and you can follow everything that she's doing. We'll drop the links there to all of the stories we covered in this conversation as well. Leigh, till next time, my friend.
Thanks, Jacoby.
All right, hold up. Don't go anywhere. The Taste of Chicago is coming up next weekend. And in this conversation sponsored by DCase, we've got the insider tips for you to make the most of it.
Hey, it's executive producer Simone Alicea here, and I'm talking with Neil Height, the director of event production for the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. Neil, welcome to CityCast Chicago.
Thanks for having me, Simone. Glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back. So just as a reminder to our listeners, what is DCase and what is your role exactly?
Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events is the city's agency or the city's Department of Arts and Culture and Events in Chicago. This department ranges from the well-known heritage festivals, Chicago Blues Festival, Jazz Festival, Gospel, House, to the Chicago Air and Water Show, and of course, Taste of Chicago.
Well, Neil, you are also the manager of the Taste of Chicago, which is what I want to talk about today because it's almost here, September 6th through the 8th. It's a Chicago institution. What do you love most about the Taste?
Taste of Chicago is an absolute Chicago tradition. And what I love most about Taste is before Buy Local was even a marketing concept, it was Taste of Chicago and still is Taste of Chicago. I think what's really important to remember to know about the Taste is that all of the food vendors that participate in Taste of Chicago are Chicago-based businesses. That's one of the requirements. That is my favorite thing about Taste of Chicago, just how intentional and diverse the menu offerings are at this year's event.
Well, speaking of the downtown event, tell me about some of the new restaurants that are going to be featured this year.
So we've got quite a few new vendors and restaurants that will be at the Taste of Chicago, and we're really excited about them. Arepa George is a new one that is going to be joining us. Ponce is a new one that will be joining us. Donut Dudes, Cumin Club, Indian Kitchen, Mono Modern Cafe. And these are really interesting, dynamic, diverse neighborhood gems of culinary establishments.
Do all these vendors have brick and mortar spots, or are some of these maybe catering only, online only?
Some of them are catering only, some of them are shared kitchen. A few years back, we sort of discovered that a lot of these shared kitchens were really exploding in Chicago. More and more of these shared kitchens were opening. It meant that there were culinary entrepreneurs who were making things that were really creative, really out of the box, offering tastes that maybe wouldn't necessarily be supported in a brick and mortar restaurant, but at a pop-up trial version had some space. The cool thing was we created an avenue or a platform for these shared kitchen applicants as well. So Taste of Chicago is now made up of certainly restaurants, caterers, shared kitchen users, food trucks, all part of Chicago's culinary scene.
Hardest question I'm going to ask you, Neil. Got to narrow it down. What is the one thing you absolutely have to eat at the Taste this year?
Simone, one thing. I mean, one thing
One
is
thing.
like, that's like choosing your favorite kid. Here's what I will say. Eat one thing that you have never eaten before. And whether that is fried green tomatoes, whether that is a spicy pork taco, whether you are in the mood for a mangonada, a frostbite ice cream, donut ice cream sandwich, try something that you haven't tried before. The things that are on my mind are the ones that I just said. Of course, I'm always interested in the Korean fried chicken steamed buns from Yum Dum. And Taste of Chicago's, that's where you should do that. And, I'm a big fan of walking through the Taste, trying a bunch of taste of portions, then checking out some music or some entertainment or something like that, and then going back and saying like, all right, I might try a couple of these full-size portions to, that I really enjoyed or things that I know that I'm going to love, right?
Well, speaking of the music and the entertainment, obviously a huge part of the celebration. What's special about this year's music lineup?
This year, we have 3 stages down at Taste of Chicago, bringing some really new and exciting sounds to the forefront of popular music across many different cultures. From newcomers like Yaritza y su Esencia, headlining Taste of Chicago this year. She's one of the youngest headliners that we've ever had. Also bringing some main stage legendary names like John B. and CeeLo Green to the Taste of Chicago is a real opportunity for us. And then we are also really excited. International rock band Atlas Genius will be flying in from Australia and really creating a really great night of rock out at Taste of Chicago.
So already got a lot of tips here. Check out those taste portions and walk around all those great vendors. Wear your dancing shoes, obviously, but you are our Taste of Chicago insider. Any last tips that you can give our listeners so that they can best experience the Taste of Chicago?
So let me give you one pro tip, Simone, that I think is really helpful. Go out, buy yourself a Tupperware, a fairly good-sized Tupperware container, and come down to Taste of Chicago. I suggest you walk through the Taste and pick the items out that you want to eat. Buy your items. When you've got about 4 or 5 items in there, find a shady space with some grass, sit down and eat your food and enjoy the food. Spend time with it. When you're done with that, get up, maybe go for another round. The Tupperware container allows you to sort of collect the items, sit down, enjoy the space, and then go again, as opposed to just eat and walk. That could get tiring. That's pro tip for 2024.
That's a good one. It is not gauche to bring your own container. Do it. That is a true professional tip. Love that. Neil Heitz is the Director of Event Production for the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events and the manager of Taste of Chicago. Neil, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Simone. Looking forward to seeing you down at Taste.
Taste of Chicago is September 6th through the 8th. For the full lineup of vendors and entertainment, head to tasteofchicago.us to learn more. We'll also have that link for you in the show notes.
One more thing before we get out of here. Stay tapped into all CityCast Chicago has to offer by bookmarking our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you're going to find our latest articles, a packed events calendar, and you can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, where we're going to send you all of these things and more directly to your inbox every morning, Monday through Friday, for free. And trust me, if that isn't enough to bring you in, our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, is doing the damn thing every day. Trust me, it's a beautiful read every morning. You won't regret it. Speaking of free, some good news. The 9th edition of Lucha Libre in the Park is back at Unity Park this Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. and they crowning the champion of Logan Square. It's free to attend, and I got more info for you in the show notes. As always, I appreciate you for being here, for making time for CityCast Chicago and Hey Chicago. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. Hopefully you'll join us. Peace.